Like in Costa Rica, the winter has its harsh moments. January is the coldest month of the season, and blizzards like this are not unusual. But even in such conditions, the cranes were spotted, camouflaged in a blanket of snow. Towards the end of February, the worst of winter is over. This is the season for the people in the valley to prepare their fields for the next season's planting. With spring just a couple of weeks away, the valley stirs to life again. It is also almost time for the black-neck cranes to leave. This farmer says he has noticed that before the cranes depart, they go through what appears to be a formal routine, just like a village meeting. He says the cranes almost behave like humans as they assemble to perform their farewell dance. This routine is the Finkel's mating dance, and it is performed in pairs. The dance takes place just before they leave in the spring. It is also the first time it has been recorded on film. Over the years, this ritual dance has become a legacy to the people of Bhutan. The people love the many folklore and songs that have been written about the black-necked cranes. But perhaps the most significant is the dance meant specially for Bhutan's national sport, archery. On the archery ground, the movement of the crane has evolved into a victory dance for archers. The people call the related Towards the end of February, all the birds in the valley gather in this particular field down below, and there they pair off and do their mating dances. As it gets warmer, towards the end of March, they start moving for the Tibetan plateau in their different groups, ranging anything from 3 to 25 birds. And these birds leave according to local folklore on auspicious days. As they go out, they circle the Hagan, the golden roof of the Hagan, and then they spiral the Hagan and go higher and higher and higher till they get right up to the top to the altitude where they want, and then they fly northward across the Himalayas to their summer breeding grounds.
The Tumtums finally leave these valleys after 5 months in Bhutan. Like the chants of the Buddhist monks in Popchika, the Tumtums glide over the valley and soar into the sky, almost like they were riding on the wings of prayer.
More difficult to find places to nest, more difficult to find food, lots of different pressures pressing down on these species.
The golden eagle, now re-established in parts of Britain, is mainly safe here. But elsewhere in Europe it's endangered by hunting, a threat to almost a third of the continent's birds. Lateral Bank, a stretch of mudflats in Kent, now being developed to extend Sheerness docks, the sort of habitat loss which Europe's birds cannot sustain forever. On present trends, even familiar species could before long become extinct. Alex Kirby, BBC News.
And that's all from the World Service Newsroom.
Puffins, like many other seabirds, have been badly hit by hunger. In competition with fishermen, they're the inevitable losers. Even that very English bird, the skylark, is disappearing from our countryside in the face of intensive farming. The downfall, too, of several species of owl, including the barn owl. And the Scottish crossbill, now down to 1,200 breeding pairs, is one of the most seriously threatened birds of all. It lives in the pine forests of the Scottish Highlands and nowhere else in the world. Conservationists are alarmed at the scale of the problem they've uncovered.
There are lots of different problems. Agriculture is one of the biggest ones. Agriculture, farming is getting more intensive, more specialised, more difficult to find places to nest, more difficult to find food, lots of different pressures pressing down on these species.
The golden eagle, now re-established in parts of Britain, is mainly safe here. But elsewhere in Europe it's endangered by hunting, a threat to almost a third of the continent's birds. Lateral Bank, a stretch of mudflats in Kent, now being developed to extend Sheerness docks, the sort of habitat loss which Europe's birds cannot sustain forever. on present trends, even familiar species could before long become extinct. Alex Kirby, BBC News.
Well, they do shed some of their fur in the spring to make their coats lighter, so they'll be much more comfortable during the summer when it's a lot warmer.
Do they shed any fur on their antlers?
Well, it's interesting that you ask about fur on the antlers, because I happened to bring along an antler today. And when the antlers are first growing in the spring, they are actually covered in what looks like fur, and it's called velvet. And underneath the velvet, there are blood vessels that run to carry up the calcium and minerals that the antler is made up of. So that's how the antler grows. You can actually feel the grooves in the antler where the blood vessels once ran. And antlers, when they grow, are actually the fastest growing tissue on Earth. When the antlers stop growing, the blood vessels dry up at the base of the skull, and then the velvet dries up, and the noose scrapes it off against the trees, and that's when the antler starts to look like this bone noose grow. A new set of antlers every year, and these drop off in the fall.
Why do you shed their antlers?
Well, Adam, maybe you can help show us why moose shed their antlers. Just hold your arm out. How does that feel?
Heavy.
And what would happen if you had your arm out very long?
They get very tired.
That's right, and moose get tired too. If they had to carry these things around on their head all winter long, they wouldn't have any energy left over to find food, and that's especially important in the wintertime when food is scarce. Another interesting thing is after the antlers drop off, the next spring a lot of small mammals will chew on the antler that's dropped off, and the small animals get the minerals and calciums that they need to have their young from the moose antler. So even after the moose is finished with the antler, other animals are able to find a use for it. And that shows how everything in nature is interdependent.
Distinguishing between adults and cubs that the adults won't be as aggressive to them.
How fast can they run? Because they are the fastest land animal in the world, aren't they?
Yeah, the large animals here, the larger creatures can run about 60 miles an hour, 65 miles an hour, and then get up to that within about 3 or 4 strides. The cubs, they have quite long legs, and they can run about 40, 45 miles an hour at the moment.
Thanks again, Sean. Now it's time to go on safari in Kenya with Roger Shaw, whose worries about tourists. With Kenya's famous game parks and reserves, home to thousands of different species of wildlife. Tourists play a vital part in the country's economy, as Dr. Richard Leakey explains.
At the moment, Kenya has set aside about 10% of its land surface. Some 27,000 square miles have been set aside for wildlife protection. We also have about another 4% of the country set aside as natural forest. So without the tourist industry, which requires this land, we could certainly never develop our education program, our roads. We don't have many choices in Kenya except to protect wildlife because it is such a vital industry.
But tourism also brings problems. Lucy Lizet has been working in the Masai Mara Game Reserve, studying the effects of tourism on wildlife.
Well, I studied 3 animals and looked at how the vehicles, or the tourist vehicles affected them. That is the lion, the cheetah, and the leopard. Now, the lion seems to tolerate the presence of vehicles, but I noted when vehicles increase, they do respond, particularly if the vehicles get too close to them. They respond by walking away or hiding in the bush. But the more the number of vehicles, the more stressed or disturbed the animals will be. It means they're going to affect every other activity, like hunting. If you affect the hunting, it means you're going to affect the survival of this animal, because if it can't hunt, then it will have nothing to feed on.
Aren't the tourists told when they arrive here that there are specific rules and regulations that they must follow?
There are certain rules and regulations that have been written down on some sort of brochures which are handed to the tourists when they come in. Don't get too close to the animals. In fact, they're only supposed to get as far as 20 meters. And also not to drive off the long tracks. But as soon as the ranger disappears, they will drive very close to the animal. They will drive anywhere they want to.
I saw lots of balloons going up in the sky. Don't they bother the animals?
Beautiful sunrise there.
I honestly have to think that if you have more balloons up in the air, you're going to reduce the number of vehicles on the road and probably reduce track development and reduce animal household.
Richard Leakey feels otherwise.
Part of the reason is the disturbance that it causes to other people and to the animals. And I personally feel that in the long run, ballooning should be phased out. I don't think it's the right way to view animals. And if you want to go for thrills in hot air balloons, then one should do it where there are not animals to be disturbed. So I'm against ballooning personally.
Surely there must be some way of helping both the animals and the tourists.
Yes, I'm thinking about the tourist. He has to see the animal, or she has to see the animal and take a picture. But I also have to ensure that I protect the animal so that it's there in the next 20, 25 years so that other people will be able to see it. But if we let people keep harassing them continuously, then we're also endangering the survival of these animals.
Mara is certainly a wonderful place to see wild animals, but obviously a way has to be found to keep the animals happy, the tourists happy, and make enough money to run the reserve, and then it will remain a wonderful place.
Well, that's it for today, and I'm afraid that's it for this series of LTV. Over the past 10 weeks, we've brought you many stories of the attempts being made to try and save our environment and the animals which live in it. But none perhaps as heartwarming as the release of Rocky, Silver and Missy after years in captivity, performing for our so-called entertainment. They'll never forget that, and even now Rocky is free, he still responds to signals to do those tricks which were for so long part of his daily routine. Their story is symbolic of the many mistakes we as humans have made. Let's try what's next.
Initially, we are approaching it as a renewable resource.
At our environment.
5. They wade through their accumulated data. They map the areas which have suffered the most. So far, they know the riverine area needs all the protection it can get. Unfortunately, the needs of these farmers and the ecological needs of the area are in direct opposition. They clear the riverbanks and burn the debris to grow crops to feed their families, but they also destroy a wide variety of vegetation. And that's no good for the other inhabitants of the area, like these elephants. As their habitats are destroyed, they wander further afield to find food and sometimes destroy crops. The government of Namibia is hoping that part of the answer to the region's problems may be found in attracting tourists for wildlife safaris. It would provide a source of income for locals and a reason to maintain the environment and protect the other creatures they share it with. It will take a lot of goodwill from all those involved to save this unique area. Without it, sites like this will disappear, perhaps forever.